good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whatever time zone it is, wherever you're in the world. It is your Lore Saviour, and today we're talking about the very interesting and nuanced concept of morality, good and bad, evil and heroes, and whether Kindred, the vampires of Vampire the Masquerade, are capable of being truly good people at the end of the day. And I think it's a very interesting question, one that was kind of hypothesized a little bit on a recent-ish discussion with the Lore by Night Discord server. I say recent because I'm recording this in the middle of July 2025, and this is going to be out in fucking November, so it's not particularly recent when this comes live, but I'm getting a bit sidetracked here. And the reason why I'm wanting to cover this topic is purely because there was somebody who had joined the server recently who kind of, from my perspective, implying that vampires can be good people. And I agree with them, but I also strongly disagree with them. And it's also not the first time I have seen this question asked about, and I thought I'd just give my 2 cents on it, because I think there is some interesting discussion to be had. And first of all, I have to kind of point out that I always find a question like this particularly funny, only because it kind of implies that the concepts of good and bad, hero, evil, however you want to word it, are like 2 binary options. Like, there is no grey matter. We've got evil black, heroic white, and then you just got all this grey shit in the middle. It kind of implies that grey shit doesn't really exist. So how do we define what is good and what is bad? Well, that's where all the grey shit comes in, because it's highly nuanced. Take for an example, somebody who broke into a store to steal a loaf of bread to feed their family. Are they a good person? Technically speaking, no. They broke into a shop and stole some bread. They know they weren't supposed to, but their family is starving because they live in a system where their governments don't support the needs of the ill and the poor. Okay, so that person then goes to jail because that's what the good court says that he should do. He comes out, does his time, society treats him badly. And he works up and he does a really good job, and he becomes a stellar name of the community. But people still recognise him as that guy that stole that loaf of bread. Is he still a good person? Has he atoned for his sins? Or is he forever marred as a sinner? He fights in wars, he looks after a family, he raises strangers as his own. Is he a good person? Some would say that he is, that this petty crime has been redeemed. But some would also argue that there's no such thing as a petty crime. A crime is a crime. And if that sounds a little familiar, I'm basically describing you the basic plot of Les Miserables, another Les Mis reference in a Lore by Night video, which is strange that's happened twice in 1 year, but I suppose stranger things have happened. But you sort of get the general idea with that it's all subjective. I mean, if we stick with the Les Mis example, sex workers, they're breaking the law, they shouldn't be doing what they should be doing, they should be punished for their crime. If we took it by the book and didn't have any fucking nuance in that, whereas I believe that people should be performing sex work safely in an environment that doesn't impinge upon the health and safety of anybody else. But of course, sex work is also a very dangerous business for that reason, because there aren't really any systems in place to protect people, and you could argue that putting systems in like that could ultimately do them a lot of damage. But I am not the sort of person to be diving into that conversation too much, because I'm not a sex worker and don't know lots about the subject. You also have the total inverse. You could have a completely psychotic, sociopathic serial killer that masquerades as a good person, and they may be known as this pillar of community, like all this wonderful charity work that they do, but they kill people in their spare time, and they commit fucking war crimes on people and take advantage of their reputation. I mean, have a look at every fucking celebrity. Well, not everyone, but you know what I mean. There's always some sort of big personality who had spent the last 10 or so years, or most of their lifetimes, just flashing at people, raping people, drugs, this, that, or the other. And then again, you could also make the argument, which I'm not going to, I'm just going to present it, that they're like that because of a poor upbringing and they're damaged and they should be treated for some sort of mental illnesses or whatever. But then again, people also take advantage of said systems. For example, as of the recording of this, the 15th of July 2025 in the year of our Lord Telos, I forget the fucking cunt's name. This guy here, if you're outside of the UK, you won't know who he is. He's a chef and TV personality who's a presenter on the show MasterChef. And it's recently been revealed that he has spent a good chunk of his time just like sexually assaulting, harassing women and flashing at them. And his response, oh, well, I'm autistic. How many fucking celebrities and people do you know who have tried to do away with fucking shitty things they've done? To put it like, they're mad or they're autistic. Elon Musk. Yeah, it's just things like that that just makes a whole good and bad thing in a lot of conversations a really difficult one to properly define. And I know I'm using some pretty extreme examples. I'm not wanting to suggest that somebody like him is a good person. But people can put up a front, people can lie, people can do good things for bad reasons. Or debatably bad things for good reasons, you know? So if we just like regress this a little bit back to vampires, there's this expression that I have stolen from somebody, where it's people embrace people. That vampires at the end of the day are very human feeling creatures. And when you talk about why a vampire embraces a vampire, it's a person embracing a person for mostly human reasons. Of course, embraces can happen or sort of out of a whim sometimes. But you have to think about these things as people, which is where this question of morality comes from. It also gets a bit more tricky to properly define as vampires, because vampires, by virtue of their existence, are inherently bad things. So, pun not intended there. Like, think of the first vampire in Vampire the Masquerade, Cain, who had a shitload of curses placed upon him by God via his avatar of Archangel Michael, because he killed his brother and refused to seek forgiveness, which is their decision to make, but it's a pretty shitty decision overall. Think of the antediluvians and the Methuselahs that would go around the world spreading the curse further despite Cain telling them not to. Of course, Cain did it first, so if he can do it, why can't everybody else, sort of thing? Many vampires try to uphold their humanity, or rather, the concept of their humanity, because they're not human anymore. Yes, the game breaks down the different levels of humanity and stages just so we can gamify and put some mechanics assigning to that. But if you think about that as a gradual scale over time, as vampires do more inherently awful things, it's a concept of their humanity, because as they try and survive, they have to do more heinous and risque things. They have to disregard the notion of their humanity and no longer abide by common human laws and to focus solely on the vampire ones, or more vampires than the mortal ones if they're still going to blend and interact with the mortals. And over time they just don't seem to care as much, because why would they? They're going to be hundreds of years old and the rest of humanity is beneath them, and they can go just one way or the other way, like Sabat or Camarilla, for example. Even the Anarchs are going to be jaded and going to be out of touch with humanity, just through the fact that they're just really fucking old, and times do change even if the issues and the ones controlling everything does not. Quite literally, with the existence of fucking ancient vampires. And even if they start off on a good note, like not wanting to harm mortals and doing their best to protect them, there is still an element of the fact that in order for them to survive, they have to take advantage of people and feed off of them. And if we have a look at 5th edition with the Predator types, the Consensualist, there are many ways of gaining consent from people, and it may not be consent in the truest sense of the word. Vampires have powers that can completely direct or influence or sway people's emotions. The Anarchs and the Bourgeois have presence to rile up people's emotions in a way that's best suited for their ideologies and agendas, which is taking advantage of people. It is gaslighting and manipulating people. And even with the act of just feeding a vampire, even you just sneak up on something, drain that way, you're still removing the consent from the individual. And in order for a vampire to be fully satiated, even for a brief time, they have to kill somebody. And just having a little drink from somebody is going to remove so much blood from somebody that it is going to do them a lot of harm. So is that really a good thing, that you are taking advantage of people just to make sure that you survive another night, a few more minutes? No. Vampires know the sure way to kill them, just like go to sleep on a roof and like have a sun shower. But they're not going to do that, because the act of killing oneself isn't as easy as it sounds, especially when you have a more primal monster within inside you that is going to do everything within its own bestial primal nature to preserve itself just for a little bit. So does that make a vampire a good person? It's choosing its life over the lives of those it has to feed upon. And even with the V5 predator type, the blood leech, where you feed off of other vampires, that's still putting other vampires in danger. It's still putting yourself in danger. But, you know, we're focusing more on the influence of other people, so there is no correct, on a moral standpoint, way of feeding people, or on animals, or on vampires. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And that's just one of the golden joys of Vampire the Masquerade. You can call yourself superheroes and act like it, and one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. But at the end of the day, vampires are just damned to be monsters. And that's one of the really golden Sorry, nearly walking some fucking foliage there. And that's one of the really cool things about Vampire the Masquerade and engaging with vampire stories and media as a whole, is that it's all incredibly subjective. The debates and philosophical discussions on morality are just so juicy and golden that it's far more interesting than just putting things in an objectively good and bad alignment. And even so, like, there are some objectively bad people in this world, like Trump, Elon Musk, Keir Starmer, my local MP, Margaret Thatcher, the last dozen fucking Conservative leaders in the UK, that is, Mother Teresa. Like, these are all people that I would consider to be objectively bad people, and I feel a lot of people would agree with me. But there's always going to be people that's going to debate that think these people actually did good for the world. I mean, the last one's a bit subjective, I guess, but that's just the thing. It's all just beautifully subjective. And I don't think you're really engaging with vampire stories, regardless of the medium, if you think that vampires have the ability to just be bad or just be good. Because, as I said earlier on, vampires are damned and they're going to be monsters, and in my opinion, all the good that they do is not for the good of everyone else, per se. It's a self-preservation thing to stop them from becoming a monster, but even then it's all marred with grey selfishness. Like, a lot of things that you find with modern vampire stories is that you'll have vampires that only feed on the ill, the sick, the dying, the elderly, because that's a more peaceful and less harmful way. Or you have vampires that feed on only criminals and degenerates, or they try to be the heroes in one way or another. They don't try and act like, I don't know, some stereotypes or lesser vampires, or what they deem to be lesser vampires. But again, who gives the vampire the right to act as God and decide who should live and who should die, assuming that we're following the vampire idea that drinking from someone kills them? Obviously that's not the case of Vampire the Masquerade, but go and see the previous point I made about that. And who gets to decide what a criminal or degenerate is? See the fucking point I made with Les Mis earlier on. It's all very subjective, and they're doing it to make them feel good that they are a morally good vampire, when they know deep down inside that they are a monster, and in order for them to do what they do, to survive, they have to take advantage of people. But that also asks a very interesting question. Vampires are not human. They are supernatural monsters. Should they be even trying to adhere to moral standards in the first place? It's all just beautifully interesting stuff, and this is what makes Vampire the Masquerade and other vampire stories to me just so engaging. It's just rich with emotion, it's just rich with so much possibility with narratives. It's beautifully goth, it's beautifully romantic, and regarding most editions of Vampire the Masquerade, there is a beautiful, like, anarchy and punk level to it. And then again, some people would disagree, because you would have like racist and fascist vampires. I mean, the Camarilla and the Sabbat from Vampire the Masquerade, they are examples of fascist regimes within the vampire world. There's some canonical vampire characters that are just racist. They don't like people of colour, regardless of whether you're vampire, human. And I know that a lot of people like to say that gender and that sort of thing doesn't matter to a vampire because they're very petty mortal things, and you're absolutely right. But if you think about where in the world that you are born and raised up, and vampires are not very great with change, would that perception really change? Their conception of gender and race and all those other ideological stuff would be the very core of their humanity. So whilst many vampires wouldn't care so much about gender over time, just as many, I feel, would care about that as equally as much. But it's these sort of philosophical debates that I could just be rambling about for hours, as there's so many if, buts, maybes, perhaps, to probe and ask about vampire stories and emotions, what is and isn't okay, what is subjectively or objectively morally good or bad. And I haven't even touched upon that much with Vampire the Masquerade, the whole path of enlightenment, or the roads of enlightenment, if you want to put it in a Dark Ages setting. How, for a lot of Vampire the Masquerade's history, you could actually argue for the vast majority of its history, upholding a semblance of your humanity wasn't the norm. That you try to follow other philosophical pursuits, whether that be the exploration of sin, the exploration of the vampiric body and prowess. You adhered to the wild, you upheld faith over some form of religion. But at the end of the day, it all just funnels down that same eventual damnation. That they are a monster, they are a beast. A beast they are, and a beast they are doomed to be. So I could be waffling more about this sort of thing for hours and hours, but I would love to carry on this conversation in the comments below and hear exactly what you think about all this sort of thing. Because I feel there could be lots that we could learn from this to improve our games of Vampire the Masquerade tenfold. So let me know all these sorts of thoughts and opinions you have in the comments below. And if this is your first experience of Vampire the Masquerade and this sounds incredibly engaging to you, I'm going to leave a handful of books for you to purchase via DriveThruRPG. Now the really cool thing is that if you buy them with those specific links, I get some of the money back, so you can continue to get awesome content like this where I'm talking about the lore, the setting, and providing actual games for you to run, etc. and so forth. So it's really cool stuff because you get books, I get books, and give you content for free. So it's honestly a win-win chicken dinner situation for you. But what if you got those books already but you just want to buy something else entirely? Well, you can absolutely do that because I'm going to leave the special affiliate code in the description below where you can copy and paste that into the URL of any DriveThruRPG book before you add it to your cart. And that helps just as well, which is absolutely amazing. But I can understand if you're unable to do all of that for whatever reason, because times are hard on all of us. The aforementioned dickheads I mentioned have made it really difficult for us to engage in a hobby legally. So if you can't do that, that's absolutely fine. And if you can, that's absolutely fantastic. But what you should definitely do regardless is like the video, subscribe to your Lore Saviour, and share this video with any and everyone who loves what I do. And I'll see you on the next upload, wherever that may well be for you. Until next time, farewell.